Hello, everybody from all around the world, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Roman Shevets. I'm head of marketing here at Innovatrix, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today, we want to talk about digital onboarding, and we want to talk about digital onboarding because it is by far the hottest biometric product right now in these days. We predicted that digital onboarding would be a solution of a great market potential as early as in 2017 when we designed our first vision of biometric-based remote identity verification. Only a year after, in 2018, a retail bank onboarded remotely its first client using digital onboarding from Innovatrix. And this was a bank that was positioned as a technology bank and with a promise to its clients to provide them with the latest possible technology to access banking services. But today, the situation is rather different. The impact of COVID-19 had completely redefined remote client onboarding from a technology gimmick to a critical business priority, and not only for banks, but across many industries. In fact, the demand that we see today is impressive, and it has some implications for all of us, for biometric technology and the market, for us digital onboarding providers, and for our clients. From the market point of view, we see COVID driving a rapid customer adoption of a biometric technology. And we as a biometric vendor, we see a need to focus on developing new features and often tweak user experience to satisfy the needs for very different use cases where digital onboarding is being deployed today. And for our customers, on the other hand, they need to deal with the exploding offer of digital onboarding solutions, and there are many new kids on the block, and often it is hard to identify a really reliable and a long-term technology partner. So we will address today all these issues, and I will just start with 2 slides about how this this webinar will work. So the webinar will be divided in 2 parts. The first part is a presentation, and it will take approximately 45 minutes. And then we will follow with a Q&A session that will be open for around 15 minutes. As usual, you know, this is a live show, so you are more than welcome to take active part in this webinar by asking questions anytime using the Ask a Question tab here below, as you can see on screen. We will collect all the questions during the webinar and try to address them in the live session directly in this question tab. And we will keep some questions to answer in the Q&A session at the end. In case you will need to discuss some of the topics addressed today in more detail with us, please use the Contact Us button that will appear from time to time on the bottom part of the screen. And finally, I am very happy to introduce our speakers for today. First, our very special guest, renowned biometric market researcher and thought leader, Maxine Mote, from Equity Market Intelligence. I'm sure that a lot of you here now listening to us know Maxine for her work, so I'm very happy that she can be here with us today. And she will be explaining the impact of COVID pandemic on the biometric technology and on the market. To follow with our head of product management, Daniel Ferak, who will explain how digital onboarding has evolved with this exploding demand that we see for new use cases and applications of digital onboarding. And to conclude, will be Peter Martish, head of global sales here in Innovatrix, who will suggest what to be aware of when choosing a proper digital onboarding solution and so mostly long-term technology partners. Before I pass my words to Maxine, I just want to direct your attention to the polls that we have prepared. You can join the poll by clicking the tab on the bottom of the screen, and please give your answers so we can understand all together now what are the pressing issues about digital onboarding today. So thank you very much, and I will now pass the word to Maxine.
Thanks, Roman. I really appreciate Innovatrix inviting me to be here today, and welcome to everybody. It looks like we have people from all over the world, which is fantastic. Okay, are we ready to go with the slides? There we go. Okay, that works. Anyway, go ahead to the first slide. As Roman said, a lot of you probably know me and Acuity Market Intelligence. It's hard to believe, but I've been at this for 20 years now, and working with some of the best companies in this business. I'm sure some of you out there recognize your logos, and it's always really inspiring for me to continue to work with innovators and problem solvers in the biometric space. So if you don't know about Acuity, feel free to look us up, look me up. My contact details will be at the end of the presentation. And with that, let's get into it. So this is my question for you for the day. What do a terrorism attack, a smartphone, and a global pandemic have in common? And the answer is actually pretty straightforward. Go ahead, next slide. If you think about the evolution of the biometrics market, there have been three principal events that have defined the marketplace over the last 20 years. The first of which, of course, was 9/11, which essentially created a national security-based imperative to deploy biometrics. And we saw that in the proliferation of e-passports across the globe, automated border control systems, a lot of law enforcement, and terrorism-related activity. And that was really driving the industry for 10 to 15 years before we saw another major impact, which was essentially the introduction of the iPhone 5S, which fundamentally changed the marketplace by transforming biometrics from a national security, high-end security technology into something that we were all holding in our hands. And so roughly, I don't know, 3 billion people plus in this world now are familiar with biometrics. Many of whom don't even know what biometrics are. If you ask people what's biometrics, they may give you a funny look. And then you say, oh, it's Touch ID, it's Face ID. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So that was a fundamental shift in the market, and an incredibly important shift because it brought biometrics out of the realm of a sort of exclusive high-end security, national security-based technology to something that everybody was used to using. And so we saw broad adoption and acceptance of the technology. And I would argue that COVID-19 is now the third major wave. And what's interesting about COVID is that it begins to integrate this notion of biometrics as a security technology with biometrics as a consumer technology, which is something we all have in our hands. And so we've seen in the last 8 months a real transformation in the way our lives work and in the way we work and live and how we want to operate. And as Roman mentioned, what this has done is really helped move us into a place where we're not talking about gimmicks. We're talking about really reliable technology that we all need to use to run our businesses and our lives effectively. And so in this regard, COVID is not so much a market transformer as a market accelerant, because we were starting to see a move towards biometric-based digital identity. We've seen it over the last several years, and we were seeing sort of incremental movement and growth in this direction. And companies were thinking about thinking about biometrics as a part of their digital transformation long-term strategy. And so what happened is COVID basically kind of move that strategy from the back burner or long-term vision to an urgent, something urgent that we have to deal with. And so these trends that were already in place basically got hit with steroids in terms of the immediacy of addressing the issues around biometric-based digital identity. So I know there's a little sensitivity about me using this Lenin comment, and I apologize for any who are offended or concerned, but this is a really important statement in terms of what's happening in the market today, which is there are decades when essentially nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And that is what is happening in the marketplace. And I have a couple of examples here of charts to kind of demonstrate this. This is US e-commerce penetration as a percent of retail sales in the United States. And if you look at what we see is a nice kind of slow incremental line of growth. Everybody was relatively happy with. We're moving forward. We're seeing, e-commerce grow on a regular basis, generate significant revenues. And all of a sudden, March of 2020, in 8 weeks, we saw almost as much growth, or perhaps even more growth, than we'd seen in the previous 10 years. And there's another take on this. This is actually looking at the difference between what was expected and what actually happened. And $52 billion in US e-commerce expenditure is nothing to sneeze at. So that's really what's happened. We've just seen that COVID as an accelerant of trends that were already entrenched, of things that were already happening, of visionary positions that companies were holding that all of a sudden now became serious priorities. So what does this mean for digital onboarding? As I said, fundamentally, what it's done is it's transformed digital onboarding from this aspirational strategic vision of how companies are planning to move forward to a mission critical value. And we're seeing that in, particularly in the financial services space, but across the e-commerce space, because people do not want to leave their houses. People don't want to make unnecessary trips. People don't want to have face-to-face contact, which was the foundational premise of a lot of relationships that we've built. And even in cases where people were using digital relationships, many of those digital relationships had started as one-to-one physical onboarding activities. And so we've seen a complete and total shift in that regard. And so that has profound impact on what's happening in the marketplace. Now, if those of you who followed Acuity may find this a familiar image, I got my start back in 2001 in the biometrics marketplace by talking about the technology adoption lifecycle. And if you're not familiar with this, I highly recommend you go look up Jeffrey Moore and his book, Crossing the Chasm, which I continue to believe, even though the book was written for almost 30 years ago now, it's a foundational Bible in terms of how B2B technology markets evolve. And what's happened, what we saw with the introduction of the iPhone 5, when we moved from sort of, again, as I earlier mentioned, from the security model to really a consumer model of the acceptance of biometrics, we began to see this notion of kind of crossing the chasm, where you move from kind of a very early market where technology is used in a limited scope to broad-based global consumer or broad-based, I should say, B2B2C adoption of the technology. And what's happened really with COVID is we've been thrust into the tornado component or phase of this marketplace. And the tornado phase of the marketplace is when you just see rapid acceleration, you see demand for product being really high, and you see a market that often doesn't have the sophistication or the time to go through the kind of process that they need to really evaluate particular technology. In Jeffrey Moore's terms, he says things are just flying off the shelf. And one of the issues when technology begins to fly off the shelf is that in particular, when you're talking about complex technology, you're talking about biometric technology, which has implications for privacy, for security, for data protection and ownership, it's really critically important to assess that technology in an effective way. And so as we are moving into this phase of the marketplace where there's incredible demand, where we have a lot of customers that really need to urgently adopt this technology, we have to keep in mind that it has to be balanced with a thoughtful methodology to analyze technology, to understand the criteria that you need to use, so that when you integrate that technology into your business, that you're actually going to be able to deliver the quality and reliability that you need and your customers expect. So please feel free to reach out to me. I love to talk about biometrics all day long. I'm happy to be here, and I'll be happy to engage and answer any questions that come up during the presentation in terms of, you know, where Innovatrix is, what they're doing, and how this is really reflecting what's happening in the marketplace today.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Now we will follow with Daniel, and let me just have a short look at the polls. I believe we can still ask you to fill these polls. We still have not so much answers there. So go ahead, please. You can find the polls tab on the bottom of the screen. And I see Dano is ready with his presentation, actually with his screen.
Okay.
Okay, we're there.
So thank you, Maxine. It was a really interesting intro. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so let's start with my presentation. So first of all, just a little bit about Innovatrix. We are an independent provider of biometric solutions. Our headquarters is in Slovakia, with offices in Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Americas, and with customers pretty much all around the world. We joined the market actually already 16 years ago, 2004. We started with low-level SDKs for fingerprint matchings and identification, and gradually became one of the leading biometrics providers. And I would like to focus today, of course, on year 2017, 2018, when the first idea for the digital onboarding toolkit for the new product in our portfolio came to life. And it took approximately half a year. It was a really rapid development, and actually the interest from the market was amazing. Already in 2018, when we helped a bank with first digital onboarding of their clients for account opening and loans. So that was already in 2018, but now it's even more interesting, and we will talk about it. I will try to talk about all the use cases that we currently are experiencing with our clients. So first of all, what is the digital onboarding toolkit, or what is it for? It allows the end users to quickly verify their identity remotely using just their phone and ID document. And really, for the user, it's pretty straightforward. Just take the picture of the ID, take a selfie, and basically that's it. Of course, there is quite a lot of sophisticated technologies behind the scenes, but don't worry, I'm not gonna bore you with the details. So let's really focus on the different use cases that we are currently working on with our clients. So as I mentioned, it already started with the digital onboarding for the banks in the finance sector. This is still pretty much one of the most common use cases, but the new use cases are really appearing literally every day. And we have, for example, done the remote issuance of employees' cards for one of the biggest companies in the world. We are processing peer-to-peer payments, or our clients are processing peer-to-peer payments, but doing the verification through our digital onboarding. Another use case, remote visa issuance or driver's registration for a car sharing service provider. So all these interesting use cases are appearing, and the digital or the remote identity validation or verification is really important for all of them. So that's the common denominator. And of course, COVID, one interesting use case here in Slovakia, the e-quarantine application, allowing the citizens to safely stay at home, and for the government to verify that they are really in the quarantine and not somewhere else. So it was a really interesting use case. But let's focus on, I chosen 3 use cases where we can demonstrate the technology itself, with also with some demos. So fingers crossed, everything will be working. And I will start with remote visa issuance. So the challenge here is, of course, doing it completely remotely, and that's like pretty straightforward thing. But interesting requirement here was the ICAO compliant photo for this unassisted digital onboarding. So that's why we actually had to react, and we enhance our digital onboarding toolkit with this kind of feature. So it is already built into the face capture component. We can check the ICAO parameters, ICAO quality checks, and can report directly to the user whether the photo is compliant or not. And I will show this later on in the demos. The next, or actually I will do it straight away. So now I will just turn my okay, hopefully you can see my phone screen here.
Yes, we can.
Good. So basically, this is the component I'm talking about. You can see it. It provides a simple instruction for the user, and take actually the best possible photo. Of course, it's configurable. How demanding are the checks for the quality of the photo, because for the ordinary digital onboarding, the quality or the parameters that needs to be met are not that strict as for ICAO standardized photograph. So, for example, if I open my mouth, you can see there was a sign that I need to close my mouth. So that is pretty much the first demo.
Daniel, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you doing liveness detection in that capture as well in that moment?
At this moment, I will actually get into that. Yes, it is possible. I think that's very interesting.
Did I jump the gun?
Pretty much yes, but don't worry about it. Okay.
So you'll have a demo for that, in other words, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So another use case, consumer finance, fraud prevention. So the challenge here was that the customer, that was the country where this use case was implemented, was they had actually 11 type of easy to fake IDs. Actually, you could get the ID really on the street, and you could go from one branch to another using a different ID with your face, with your photo on it. And of course, they need to find out these kind of fraudsters. And that was exactly a challenge for us. And our solution here is the biometric identity management system, which can do after the digital onboarding, it can do the identification or biometric deduplication, let's call it, and actually find potential duplicate in the database who already might have applied for a loan. So let's see another demo here. Okay, so again, digital onboarding as we know it. So I'll just take a picture of my ID. Front side, back side. I can check all the fields, whether they are read correctly. It looks all right, actually, so I'll continue. Now I'll do my selfie. And this is liveness check. So I need to follow the red dot with my eyes. And I'm waiting for the result. Okay, so hopefully you see the result. It's review identity, and now I'm wondering why, because face match looks all right. Even though I'm a bit younger on the photo on the right, it's still okay. Pass the threshold. I actually passed already the liveness check, but here is one parameter in red, uniqueness. What does it mean? It means that there is already duplicate in the database, and we could find out in basically in milliseconds that duplicate, and I will show you how it looks like for the operators. So reload. So this is what we call an investigation station, or the backend for the digital onboarding. And here are the onboardings from the past. I will show you the latest one, the one that I just did. And you can see all the data. You can see the photos from the liveness check. You can see how I move the eyes. You can see the face capture photographs. You can see my photo from the ID, and you can also see that the uniqueness score is really low. Why is low? Because there is a duplicate already in the database, and I can see it here, and I can show the duplicate. And of course, it's me when I was testing this demo just an hour ago, and you can see that I already enrolled myself. So I am already in the database, and it's suspicious that I'm trying to enroll again. So that's basically this investigation station is actually helping our clients to fight against the fraudsters in this way. Okay, back to the presentation. Last use case I would like to mention here is for the telco recently the SIM card registration. So really, this is very recent business, or actually the business really needs to go on also during the COVID, and it's very important for any who wants to get the new clients, anyone who wants to get new clients even in these complicated days. One more challenge here was really that the usual drop-off rate for the online registration is actually about 40%, which is really, really high number. And it's usually because the poor UX. So, for example, that active liveness check that you've seen is not a very pleasant thing to do. You need to move your eyes. If you close them, or if you do not look directly into the camera, you might get some problems. And that's why we actually worked really hard to came with the solution which we call passive liveness detection. So you do not need to follow the instructions here. You just take your photo, and that's it. And I will show you the how it looks like in the demo. Yeah, and this is a chart supporting what I just said. So basically, these are the data based on data from our biggest client. So it really helped tremendously this client to onboard new customers, and the active liveness was not the only issue there, but the user experience itself increased dramatically, also adding the passive liveness check.
Daniel, if I may add, sorry, yeah, can you please go back one slide? Mm-hmm. This slide may suggest that passive liveness detection is dramatically better comparing to active one. It's not exactly the case. I mean, both are super accurate. The major difference is in the user experience. With the active liveness, user is challenged to perform an action, right? Either blink your eyes or follow the object on the screen or move your head towards the direction you're instructed to do. And so a lot of users fail to comply in time, or they don't want to, or they feel silly. So if you expect the user to do something explicit for you to check his liveness or her liveness, this doesn't always work out. Whereas with the passive liveness, all they need to do is look into the camera, which is something they're already doing anyway. So the expected action from the user is basically nil. And that's why the completion rate is so high, because there is not too many ways to mess it up. So all you need to do is look in the camera and the passive liveness go through, whereas the active requires your cooperation. Some companies decide to combine these two because active liveness gives you an impression of security, because you have to actually do something to get through, whereas passive is literally invisible to the user. So combination of both is oftentimes at the best combination of convenience and security.
Can I just jump in on that? I find that really interesting, because there's a lot of conversation in the market right now, and there are certain constituencies that are really saying you only should have passive liveness. That's the only kind that works. It sounds like what I'm hearing is there are certain cases that you guys have found where that's true, but there are other cases where perhaps having that active liveness is actually something that the customers want to insist on. So are you finding that having that flexibility is useful for you in terms of being able to, navigate all these different use cases that are coming up?
Exactly. That's exactly the case. Actually, many customers really require some actions from the user, or action from the user, just to see that there is something happening, that is something required to prove that they are alive. And really the best way here is to combine both approaches, and we can see that with our clients. But from the user experience perspective, where maybe the security is not an issue, but really the user experience is the biggest or the most important thing, the passive liveness check, of course, is the winner here. And I would like to demonstrate it.
While you get it ready, Dano, it's also a matter of the use case. If you are going through a once-in-a-lifetime onboarding process, maybe you don't mind a little extra action just to make sure it's all as secure as it gets. Whereas if you want to use facial biometrics for daily facial authentication, which is also a possible use case, you definitely don't want to do any kind of exercise, move your head or blink or smile. All you need to do is just take the app, launch it, look in the camera and go. And that's where passive liveness comes in effect. So for active, ideally combination of both. For onboarding, you combine both the liveness detection algorithms for daily authentication or application usage. Passive is more than enough.
Exactly. So, okay, hopefully you can see my screen, the screen of the mobile phone, which is showing. And you can see, so this is running on the device itself. The evaluation is really fast, and you can see the score of the passive liveness evaluation frame by frame, and you can see that green means that everything is okay. Now I'll try to do a simple attack. So trying to enroll with my printed photo, and you can see a threshold is not met, the score is too low, and basically the passive liveness check is failed. So the same with the photo from a screen of a device, which is another common replay attack. And I think this is really impressive how technology can help us with the user experience. And I would like to show also the very last demo here. Just give me please a second. Maybe you can, in the meantime, you can try to see the polls.
Yeah, let's try to have a look at the polls. So, we have been asking you, we still don't have so many answers, but let's try to share the screen. Okay.
Okay, guys, can you still hear me?
Well,
We can hear you, okay?
yes.
Okay. Great.
We can see a blue screen still. Yeah.
Blue screen, that's okay. Let's
Of death.
fix it. I'll fix it. Okay, so still blue screen. Okay. So hopefully you can see my iPhone right now.
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, so basically everything that we've been explaining currently with the very last demo here. So once again the whole process, but now really straightforward. So taking the picture of my face automatically. Taking a picture of the ID, again automatically, sorry. So you can see the document auto capture in action. So I do not need to press a button here, and that's it. We got the results. We got the result of the phase match. We got the result of the passive liveness check, and we got the ID, the OCR. Let's try this again with the fake identity. So let's.
We cannot see the screen now then.
Okay.
Of your phone.
Maybe I just to summarize what exactly has happened during this very brief demo on iPhone. Dana was actually taking a selfie, so we have a auto capture algorithm, so you don't really need to do much in order to use the best possible selfie, which is important for the accuracy of facial biometrics. Second, he was taking the picture of the ID card, which again was taken automatically. So the real-time algorithm is evaluating the quality, sharpness, etc., to use the best possible frame or a picture of the card. And then we performed OCR, optical character recognition. So we actually extracted the content of every single line on the ID card. We detected the face on that card. We extracted the face. We compared it with the selfie. We have performed passive liveness in the background to make sure it's a real human being, not a playback or a photograph looking in the camera. And we evaluated all these scores and presented on the final screen. So quite a lot of technology and magic happening behind the scenes. What it looks eventually is a very simple two-step process.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Unfortunately, I can't connect back to my phone, so I can't do that. But hopefully, this was explaining the technology and from the user perspective, and I'll be really glad to answer any questions. And I think, Peter, you can continue with your part. Thank you very much.
Are we doing the questions now or at the end?
No, in the end, we have some questions collecting. There were some questions regarding the onboarding that Dano showed. Mm-hmm. We can address them after your part.
All right, so let's proceed now. What makes Innometrics unique? That's a very salesy question. I will try to address the topic of how to choose an ideal biometric technology partner for digital onboarding. It's really difficult these days. We've done a research last week and updated it, and we counted 76 startups that have serious funding and whose primary focus is digital onboarding. Right? So that's quite a competition, and they have beautiful stories and nice websites and great flash animations and demos and videos and mockups. So it's kind of difficult for the vendors to stand up and for the customer to choose the right partner. So why we think we might be a decent option in this arena. Innometrics has been on the market for 16 years. So we are not exactly a startup, which means we know our way through, and we can, I think we can be trusted. We believe, or we are convinced, we are experienced. Our core business has been and always will be biometrics. And that's not reselling biometrics. That's not combining third-party components. That really is in-house core development. So we are focusing on developing biometric modalities. We are delivering a huge amount of projects that are purely biometric, and we have made a significant number of customers and users that are using our technology. 65% of our staff are scientists, researchers, and engineers. That also gives an idea. We really are a tech company more than anything else. We have a large innovation and R&D center in the city of Brno in Czech Republic because there was a very good university focusing on deep learning. We have been a co-founder of Kempelen Institute of Innovations and Technology, which is a non-profitable company focused on research and development in the area of deep learning, specifically focusing on natural language processing and computer vision. So it's a pure research focusing on image processing, vision, language processing, and we have been one of the 3 founding companies. And we are obviously working with the board. We are the member of the board, and we are also assigning some of the research tasks, and that's something that really helps us to develop our products further. And we are also sponsoring and supporting students in the technical universities. Then later on, we're trying to hire, of course. So, and our CEO and the owner is also the CTO, and he's still coding and developing algorithms. So everybody in the company really is very close to tech, and we proud ourselves for what we have achieved ourselves. When we have started the business 15 years ago, our key focus was on government customers. Because basically, I mean, government was the only domain where biometric made sense and where it was allowed. You know, immigration, document issuance, that all requires biometrics. First, it was fingerprint. Later on, we moved on to the facial, and we have gained a lot of, or acquired a lot of projects and delivered successfully all of them. And when we looked around, we thought, why don't we use biometrics in the enterprise world? Why people generally despise biometrics? Why isn't it's not used in the consumer business? And then the first phones with the fingerprint sensors came in. So people started to adopt biometrics on a daily usage, even without knowing that's actually biometric. You just touch the button and the phone has magically unlocked itself. At the same time, we tried to pitch the biometrics technologies, specifically the facial, to banks, and we tried to convince them, look, you could use facial biometrics as one of the elements for authentication. It could replace your password or PIN code. It's more convenient. People don't forget their face. It cannot be really spoofed easily. It's secure. It's very convenient. And the feedback we have received from banks and telcos was that having a second factor is nice, but our problem really is to get new customers remotely. And that was before the Corona time, mind you. It was 2017, when we have received the feedback from the customers that facial authentication is nice, but we really need to be somehow able to verify one's identity without actually seeing them in person. And we have been researching the possibilities, and that was the first time, 2017, when we came up with a digital onboarding idea, where we thought we would just compare the face on the ID card with the face from the camera, from the selfie. We would perform liveness, and then we would combine all this and send it to the server to decide whether or not this is a trusted attempt to onboard. And since then, we have gained a lot of traction and customers in different verticals. So currently, we have customers using onboarding in governments. We have these customers in the enterprise world, and the use cases are very typical. We already talked about those, so you can onboard new banking clients through the digital onboarding. You can sell SIM cards or eSIMs, even better, remotely with the registration through the digital onboarding. We can issue the visa, and we have customers that are doing digital e-visa issuance through digital onboarding toolkit. Renewal of your about to expire driver's license is something we're doing as well. You don't need to go to the nearest DMV office. You just scan your expired driver's license, take a selfie, go through the onboarding process, and next thing you know, a courier or registered post will be delivering you a new one to your doorstep without you leaving the comfort of your home. So there are so many use cases we haven't even thought of when we started this endeavor, and we consistently managed to convince, deliver, and support these projects out there in many, many countries and regions. Matter of fact, we counted the continents on which we have delivered a solution, and it's 5 out of 7. Up to till today, we have close to 90 million enrollees, so people that have been enrolled using digital onboarding toolkit. We have approximately 50,000 enrollees every day. These guys are registering themselves on both enterprise and government fronts. So applying for visa, applying for a micro loan, applying for opening a new bank account. That's 50,000 registrants a day. And 32 these days with the recent O2 customer we have acquired. We have 32 major global enterprises and institutions that are using digital onboarding toolkit to register their clients and customers. So that's what we have managed to do and achieve with the digital onboarding alone in the recent 3 years from starting 2017. Next slide, please. And now it's a time to thank you, everybody, for your attention. And we have several questions, Roman. Do you want to take them up, or are we going to?
Yeah, I will be taking them up. I just want to briefly go through the two most interesting, I believe, answers that we have in poll. What is surprising, like what is the single biggest impact you have seen or hope the digital onboarding will bring to your company? So it is not to increase in new clients. Actually, mostly people or customers, companies are interested in faster customer onboarding. So it's all about the user experience to get the clients on board as fast as possible. And also the question about what is the motivation behind the implementation of a digital onboarding solution is actually confirming the necessity created by COVID pandemic, where almost 40% of companies need the contactless, need to provide the remote onboarding and contactless interactions with the customers. Okay, so I will now start with the questions. I will start with the first one from Mauricio. Please, who feel to answer the question, just pick it up. And the question is, what about the face recognition between the selfie taken from the dot and the picture printed in the document? Is it the part of dot tools? How accurate it is? I believe this is for Dano.
Yes. Yes, of course, it is part of the digital onboarding toolkit. Actually, that's a very important part of actually doing the face verification. So the face that is printed on the ID card, verified against the selfie that is taken during the onboarding with the mobile phone. Actually, maybe I can show again the screen from the investigation station when we can see when we can see it.
No, cannot. I'm afraid now.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Just a second.
While you're already up, Dano, I will continue. So comparing the two faces is the essential piece of digital onboarding. It's a facial biometric task. It's actually called matching. So you're comparing one face to another. And based on the score you get, you decide whether or not it's the same person. So yes, that's a very important part of the onboarding, any onboarding, the remote onboarding technology. And obviously the engine we use is our own in-house development. And how accurate is, there is a benchmark for that. And Innovatics is one of the maybe a top 5 most accurate facial recognition algorithms worldwide. The test is called NIST FRVT, Facial Recognition Vendor Test. If you Google it, you'll get to their site and you will see a very objective comparison of different facial recognition vendors.
Okay, and I believe you can now see the screen.
Yes, we can.
And this is exactly basically the result of the onboarding. So you can see the matching score between the face from the selfie and the face on the document, on the ID. You can see also the matching score between the face from the active liveness check. So when I was moving with my eyes, again, with the face capture photograph. Okay.
Okay. I would just add to this question. There is one more question, and it's regarding the score. So exactly the phase match. So maybe you can just quickly answer this, and then we can continue to another topic. So is 69? This is the score, match score that you had before there. If it is a percentage, and if it is, it's a quad borderline match, is it okay? So maybe you can explain a little bit from kitchen.
It's not a percentage. It's actually it's not the linear score. It's logarithmic, and 69 means approximately accuracy about 99.99%. So it's really basically the measure with really high accuracy or high probability of matching.
Thank you. Another question for you, I believe. How many seconds of video is needed to evaluate the liveness?
So that's an interesting question. Actually, it's only one frame that is needed for the passive liveness check, and the magic can be really done just directly on the mobile phone. So there is no need for transferring the data from the phone to the server. It is possible. Then do the liveness check again on the server to verify what the client provided. But all it needs is really just one picture, one frame. So it's not a video.
Okay, thank you. Now there is actually a question for Maxine, I believe, and this is quite maybe controversial question. So let's ask. The market dynamics presentation is correct. However, isn't it the fact that the players will not be the so-called biometrics companies like Innovatrix? What do you think about this, Maxine? Who will be the players?
Well, I don't know, because I know there's a lot of big players in the digital onboarding space, and Peter made a reference to this, to a lot of the startups. And I've been doing some research into this. A large percentage of the companies that are offering digital biometric-based facial recognition digital onboarding are not creating their own technology. There's a limited number of companies that are actually creating their technologies. So some of the big digital onboarding players, like Jumio, for example, they don't create their own technology. So I think that, yes, there are certainly companies that are in that space, but by definition, if they're creating their own biometric technology internally, then to some extent, they're a technology development company. So the definition may broaden because there are a few companies that have focused on digital onboarding and decided that they have to create their own tech, biometric tech, as part of that. But I don't, there's different models that are going to emerge, and it's unclear yet how the market dynamics will play out. I mean, perhaps financial institutions are going to decide that they have to own this technology in-house. Perhaps the financial institutions are going to be displaced by digital-only organizations. So I'm not really 100% sure what the question means, but my assessment is that biometrics is enabling technology, and whether or not we have independent enabling technology companies that exist, or they all ended up getting incorporated into larger companies, is yet to be determined. But I don't see competition today coming from, non-biometric players per se, independently.
Thank you, Maxine. And I would follow also with a question that is in the lines, and I would like to ask Peter, because I know he will love to answer this question. So for the liveness detection, do you use 2D or 3D liveness detection?
As many Ds as you want. No, by definition, 3-dimensional image can be taken by a 3-dimensional camera. So you either have a LiDAR scanner or you have a 2-camera setup where you have a left and right eye emulation. Everything else is just a mock-up. So if you take several images from your face for different distances, you can measure the optical distortion or that's caused by the camera lens, and that gives you an idea of a different perspective, but it by definition is not a 3D. So rather than focusing on 2D, 3D, it's how you get from A to B. It's you get there fast and secure, and that's what we're focusing on. So we are using deep learning and neural networks to assess the liveness from one single image, which is very important for the user experience. If you want to do any kind of this kind of exercise, that's already requires the user compliance, and it takes time and it's a lot of data to upload to the server. So we have been focusing on a very strict and easy user experience. All you need to do one selfie, one image. We look at it and we tell you you're live or not. Whether it's 2D or 3D, we may come up with all kinds of fancy marketing terms. What matters is that it's super secure. And we have been measured by iBeta. We have a report that we can share with anybody interested. Their penetration success was 0, so they did not manage to spoof our liveness. What's more important, at the 0% rejection rate. So none of the attempts that were legit, so a regular human being was looking at the camera, was falsely rejected. You can't get much better than that. 0 false rejection and 0 false acceptance, and that's what we have been assessed or measured by a third-party institution.
Thank you, Peter. I knew you would like this question. So I believe there is a question for Dano. What are the typical minimum requirements of the smartphone to be used?
Well, that's the trick. It can be pretty much any smartphone that is currently on the market. The resolution of all consumer mobile phones is good enough for doing the digital onboarding, basically with really any low-end device.
Okay, thank you, Dano. So I see 2 more questions. I don't see really question in those questions. So I see also that we are 2 minutes over. And I believe we can just wrap it up here if there are no new questions coming in. And
I mean, maybe, Roman,
yes?
if I may.
Yes.
There are 2 comments from Ben, who is disputing digital onboarding just ID identification verification.
Is not.
Yes, when this is a philosophical discussion, if our readers or viewers or attendees check out the questions, there's actually 2 questions from the same person disputing our claim that we do digital onboarding. We don't, and we never said we are the digital onboarding company. We provide a technology stack that makes or allows for the digital onboarding deployment, right? So we can talk about Jumio, which is really focusing on end-to-end digital onboarding process, and even there, you need to do a backend integration. So as much as you can automate of the process of onboarding, eventually when you have all the data, you have to feed it into the backend system, to the core banking platform, into the billing system of the mobile carrier. So it's not our goal. We are not going to be, or we don't want to be an end-to-end digital onboarding provider with all the bells and whistles. What we know is technology, and we understand biometrics, and we can provide a very reliable and efficient technology stack for anyone to enable for digital onboarding. That's our focus.
I hope we answered Ben's comments. And if you don't have, if anybody has another closing remarks wants to make, feel free. And if not, I will be just closing this webinar. Thank you, everyone who participated. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here with us. And you can come back anytime to this link to review this webinar and share it with your friends and people you think might be interested in what you've seen today. So thank you, Maxine. Thank you, Dano. And thank you, Peter.
Thanks. It was great.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks
nice
a lot
day.
for your time.
Bye, everyone.